Hello, this is Adam Eason. We've got another composer, another piece, and we're going to take a peek at a few of the interesting things about it. Today we've got Fanny Mendelssohn, born 1805, died 1847. If you think, hey, Mendelssohn, that's a familiar name, well, you're probably familiar with her brother, Felix Mendelssohn. Wrote a number of symphonies. If you're a violinist, you've almost certainly encountered his violin concerto. Fanny Mendelssohn, however, is sometimes just footnoted in history books. So today we're going to correct that a little bit. Right over here, we've got part of her score, her manuscript score for Das Jahr, the year. This is a collection of 12 character pieces depicting the months of the year. She wrote it in 1839 through 1841, and they depict mostly her experiences traveling around Italy during that time, 1839 through 1840, and then spent more time completing the work. Now, when she wrote it, she said in her letters that each piece was given the name of a particular place in Italy that she enjoyed, but that those were kind of private names. For the public manuscript, she decided to go with different months of the year, so 12 pieces, 12 months, and then a 13th piece at the end, a postlude, which kind of wraps everything up. They're quite virtuosic. I imagine rather tiring to play if you try to play them in their entirety. And they show off not only her skill as a pianist, but also her skill as a composer. Felix Mendelssohn often turns to her for advice in his own compositions and gave great consideration to that advice. So let's take a look and see what she has to offer in terms of this large piano work of hers. We'll start with January. The first page of each month is accompanied with an attractive illustration. All of these illustrations were done by her husband, William Hensel. He was quite supportive of her musicianship and any publishing ambitions that she might have had. It's a little bit unclear how seriously she wanted to pursue that as a profession, but you can see William Hensel must have thought quite highly of her music if he did 12 of these drawings for this manuscript. The first movement, January, is marked Adagio quasi una fantasia. It's even labeled ein Traum, a dream. So Adagio means slow, quasi una fantasia, like a fantasy, like a dream. And you can see this picture here depicting somebody reclining and just kind of in a daze, in a doze, doing some daydreaming. It's a little hard to tell what they've got. It looks like it's a lyre, I think. In any case, this kind of reclining, sleeping figure pops up in other romantic drawings of the time. It must have been a favorite type of image to portray. Speaking of dreaming and Adagio quasi una fantasia, there's another famous piano work that uses this marking and has a similar kind of nocturnal theme to it. That's Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata. In this case, I don't think that's what she was exactly referencing with this work, but when I play a little bit of it, you can hear that it has some similar qualities to it. So let's get into that. This is the beginning of January, Ein Traum, and let's hear what she has for this month of the year. couple of things to note. We have this very ominous sounding bass line accompanied at the end of each melody, this bright chord that just sort of pops up into the highest registers of the texture. This happens twice, then this big chord progression that sort of dissolves into this long sustained chord, a moment where there's some imitation, some kind of call and response between a soprano melody and an alto melody. So that was the opening of January. It eventually winds its way up into a faster section, becomes very much like Bach. Bach was a favorite of both Fanny and Felix Mendelssohn. Felix Mendelssohn, of course, well known for his public conducting of some of Bach's music, sort of bringing J.S. Bach back into the public sphere. And some of January definitely sounds familiar to lovers of Bach's music. But we're going to skip on ahead down to February. February is marked as a scherzo, presto. Scherzo means joke, but in this case it's not so much a joke as it is a light-hearted, fast piece. Very technical, very virtuosic. You'll hear this kind of glittering, kind of chasing texture that sometimes crops up in Felix Mendelssohn's music as well. Particularly, it brings to mind like his Midsummer Night's Dream. Of course, Felix and Fanny worked together quite frequently in terms of sharing each other's music and giving each other feedback. So I imagine that this texture was sort of a, just kind of a favorite between the two. With that in mind, let's get into February. Actually, January goes straight into February without a break. She marks the end of January, attacca into number 2. And this slow, fast pairing sort of reminds me of Baroque opera overtures or oratorio overtures. It could be that she had something like that in mind, but I don't know, it would take some scholarship to figure out if that was something that she was striving for. In any case, I'll play just the end of January going into the first page of February. You can hear February is quite virtuosic, very technical, and she wrote this for herself. She was no slouch at the keyboard. So let's hear what it's got. And it spins on and on in such a fashion. It's quite impressive. I imagine that this is one of the more tiring movements to play, and it happens just right near the beginning. And here we are. The last movement that we'll take a look at is March. This illustration that William Hensel provided is particularly interesting. You can see that Fanny Mendelssohn marked this preludium and chorale, so a prelude and a chorale melody. And the hymn melody that she uses for this movement, Christ ist erstanden, is a German Easter tune and basically is a telling of the resurrection of Jesus. So in this case, the image that we have an angel, another angel ringing a bell, 3 women in various states of mourning and or revelation, maybe in the case of this middle figure here. This is a depiction of what's known as the quim quaeritus moment, the who are you looking for? So these women are outside of Christ's tomb, they are mourning his death, and the angel appears asks them who they're looking for, and then reveals that Christ has resurrected. The prelude itself, I'm not sure if it's referencing anything in particular, but in style, it reminds me of a lot of the German Lieder that I've listened to. Lieder are German art songs, and it was a hugely popular genre for learned composers of the late 18th century on through the 19th century, even the early 20th century. Composers were writing these Lieder. And in that's kind of the style that it reminds me of. I don't know that there was a specific one she had in mind. So, with that in our ears, let's skip on ahead to March and hear what the beginning of this sounds like. And it continues on, repeating that melody with this animated trill in the middle of the texture. Another one of those things that is just like pianistically quite challenging to maintain the melody with these fingers, and then these fingers over here are alternating between these two notes rapidly. Before we listen to Fanny Mendelssohn's rendition of Christ ist erstanden, let's actually listen to the hymn tune itself. This is a group called Art de Chor and a performance in Paderborn, Germany back in 2011. I'll make sure to link this performance in the description below. One of the issues that you bump into with looking up hymn tunes is a lot of these tunes are very, very old. Christ ist erstanden goes back, way back to like the 1100s. And there are so many versions of this tune. So many versions of this tune. Just like there are a lot of different versions of other hymn tunes. With that in mind, I couldn't actually find which specific version Fanny Mendelssohn might have used for her piano work here. It sort of resembles the version J.S. Bach used at some points, and then at other points it's not the same. So I kind of wonder if she just, seasoned to taste, as it were. So now that we've got the hymn tune in our ears, let's hear how she treats this tune as a chorale. So at the beginning, you can hear she has the hymn tune harmonized as a simple Lutheran chorale, like something you would hear in Sunday church. And then she pulls out the big guns, puts in these big 16th note runs, again on the inside of the texture, and places a nice fat bass at the bottom, and then in thick chords has the chorale melody on top. Quite impressive. The movement then ends with these big chords and lands us solidly in the triumphant mood of the Easter Sunday revelation. So those were the first three movements of the 13 that are in this set. They clearly demonstrate, I think, her skill as a composer, her skill that she must have had as a keyboardist as well. I mean, she was writing these for herself and she would have performed them herself. As a young teenager, she actually performed by memory the first two books of The Well-Tempered Clavier for one of her father's birthdays. So she was no slouch at the keyboard. Hopefully this gives you some inspiration to go check out some of her other music. She's got something like 400 pieces to her name. Unfortunately, not very many of them were published during her lifetime. Only her Opus 1, a collection of songs. And then just a couple months later, she died of a stroke. So she didn't have much opportunity for her music to be released to the public through those avenues. All right, that'll be it for today. Hopefully you enjoyed this short talk on Fanny Mendelssohn's Das Jahr. If you did, like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what pieces you think I should take a peek at for the future. And I also have to give a huge shout out to my patrons for helping support me. They support these videos, they support my blog. I've got some arrangements that I do. If you're at all curious at following those, then hop on over to my Patreon page linked below. All right, thanks for everything, everybody, and I'll see you again next time.